So I've been on T for 5 years. I started on injections when I was 19, and I'm 24 now. I've been on injections and gel, I've had top surgery, and I've had my name legally changed along with my gender marker. But what have I learned in those 5 years? Before we get started with the things that I've learned, please be sure to smack that subscription button, because I've been inactive on this channel for a year, but that's changing. I will be bringing you much more queer content. So hit the subscribe button if you'd like to stick around for that. Also, I wanted to promote my GoFundMe for a second because I'm currently raising money to become a coach for trans youth and young adults. I want to help them end any chaos and fear around their transition and really step into their authentic selves. And I want them to be able to reclaim their identity no matter where they are in their journey. I'm living paycheck to paycheck like a lot of us are, but I couldn't pass up on this amazing opportunity that I have. The link to the GoFundMe will be in the description below, and if you're not able to donate, sharing that link would be absolutely amazing. Now that I've gotten all that out of the way, let's get into it. There's 5 big things that I've learned in those 5 years on testosterone. The first is patience is key. I know this is way easier said than done, and this applies to many different aspects of life and not just your transition, but I get how patience is absolutely needed when you transition. The changes, if you do medically transition, take a long time. And that's not just your medical transition either. Social transition takes a long time, and so does legal transition. It can also take a long time to feel fully comfortable in your body and fully accept yourself. And that's okay. Transitioning is a process, and learning to really embrace the journey is part of what makes it so amazing. And to be honest, sometimes the wait makes the outcome so much better and so much more fulfilling. The second thing that I've learned, and I knew this before I started transitioning, but it's something that I have grown to appreciate during my transitioning, is that transitioning is a lifelong journey. It never stops. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I used to think of it as something negative and that it was some burden that I'd have to take on for the rest of my life. But now that I'm 5 years into my transition, I realize that it's a gift in a way, because that means that I get to spend the rest of my life discovering new things about myself, or growing and changing and evolving physically or mentally or whatever else. And I know everyone does that throughout their lives, but it feels like it's an even deeper experience when you transition. And now the thought that I get to transition for my entire life is exciting. I get to continually evolve into the best version of myself and the version of myself I've always wanted to be. And while I'm very satisfied with my transition, it's interesting and exciting to see how it continues to evolve and how I continue to evolve into my identity as a man as I get older and older. Because I'm getting old. The third thing that I've learned is that hormones save lives. I can say this from a very personal standpoint, both for myself and the people around me. Hormones save lives. When I was a teenager, dysphoria was the thing that depressed me the absolute most in life. I would spend days and days and days just coming home from school and laying in bed for hours and hours and hours because I didn't want to do anything else. I didn't want to think about anything else. I didn't want to exist, if we're being honest. And there were many nights where I would pray to God that I would just wake up in the body that I wanted. And that never happened. And I just continued to spiral further and further into depression and further into dysphoria. And of course, I learned to cope with it over the years until I started testosterone. But the journey to get there was hard, to say the least. And of course, things weren't fixed overnight. I still struggled a lot with dysphoria, and sometimes I still do struggle with it. But testosterone was the huge stepping stone into me loving my body and actually wanting to live my life and be here to see myself turn 24 and older. So testosterone and my transition in general has absolutely saved my life. I know that I would not be here speaking to you today as the man that I am had I not had testosterone or the ability to transition the way that I wanted to. The fourth thing that I've learned is that labels are important, but they're not everything. And of course, this is a more person-to-person basis. I know labels are very important to some people, and to some people, they just don't matter at all. And as I've grown and evolved in my identity, being trans used to be at the forefront of my identity. It was the most important thing about me, and it was the thing that I talked about the most because I felt like I had to fight to show my identity. But now that I've reached a point in my transition where I am comfortable with myself physically, mentally, socially, and emotionally, and of course it's still incredibly high up there. It's still an important, integral part of who I am as a person and why I am the way that I am and who I am. But as I've learned and grown and evolved in my transition, I know that I'm trans, but that's not all that I am. There's a lot more to me, and there's a lot more to my talents and personality and my identity in general. And I know that I can't just be boiled down to being trans. That's not the only important thing about me. While it is very important, it's not the only important thing. And the last thing that I've learned is very important for anyone to hear if they're just starting their transition, or if they're not at a place where they can transition yet, or if they have to wait for any reason. Dysphoria never really does go away, but it does become an afterthought. And the most important thing is that it does get better. I know everyone says that that's a load of bullshit and that it doesn't, but it does. I am living proof that it gets better. Because 5 years ago, I was in the same place that you were. I was depressed. I was sad. I had no sense of where I was going. I had no idea how I would even transition. I was terrified that I'd have to cut off my friends and family if they didn't accept me. I didn't even know if I would be able to. I didn't even know if I'd be able to make it to transition. But I'm proof that that's possible. I'm here, 5 years on testosterone, 24 years old, and I'm still here. And I plan to be here for a very, very long time. So to anyone who is where I was 5, 6, 7, 10 years ago, it does get better. You just have to be willing to hold on to see it get better. Don't give up. You're too strong for that.